Welcome back to another episode of Christmas Cupid. This is Amy once again.
And this is Shane.
What are we seeing and talking about today?
Today we're talking about 2022's Ghost of Christmas Always. Um, I told you about this the other day when we were just kind of talking about it before we did the podcast. I want to talk about this. This is the thing I want to say. We spoil these movies every time we talk about them, but this one is really, I think, because I'm spoiler for our own podcast. I love this movie. I think it was a lot of fun.
And it is a Hallmark movie, correct?
It is a Hallmark movie. I didn't say that. You're right. Thanks for correcting me. We are going to spoil this movie. Like, there's an ending that you might not kind of see coming. You might, but you might not. And because it's basically another Christmas Carol redone, right? And there's an ending in this one that I don't think everyone will see coming, and it's delightful. It's really good. So, but we're gonna spoil that. We're gonna totally kill that. So, this is a Christmas Carol basically, and it stars Kim Matula plays the Ghost of Christmas Present. So it's got the Ghost of Christmas Present, future and past, right? Reginald Vell Johnson from Family Matters played Carl on Family Matters, and played on
Die Hard.
Your
favorite?
My favorite movie in the world. Yeah.
Your favorite Christmas movie?
Yeah, it is my favorite Christmas movie. My second favorite movie in the world. But yeah, he plays Roy, which is the Ghost of Christmas Future, and then Arlene is played by Lori Tan Chin. We've seen her in some things before too.
Mm-hmm.
They always put her as the little quirky because she's really short, and she's kind of funny and gets a little angry really quickly, quick to get a hot temper. I just remember when we opened up, we watched this one, and we were like, did we skip something?
Right. It was a very confusing beginning. Like, it was almost like you gonna just shut it off because you're like, nah, this isn't the direction that I think I want to watch a show in.
I didn't think that. I thought did I fast forward? Like, what happened? Like, because it opens up at the end of they call what they do the ghost when they're talking to getting the person to to see that have more Christmas spirit. They call it Scrooging, right? So they opened up at the end of a Scrooging, and I was like,
right, it was very misleading.
I was like, what's going on, right? And it's the woman whose name's Susan. It's gonna matter at some point, right? And we don't know anything about her at this point, but they were done with her Scrooging. She was seeing the Christmas spirit and joy and all that fun stuff. So they were about to leave and go back to like the ghosts' place where they hang out, their hub, for lack of a better term. And Catherine wanted to kind of hang out a little bit because they were in Hartford, Connecticut, right? Hartford, yeah. You don't have any idea. Yeah, zero.
Does that play a relevance in this whatsoever?
Well, I mean, yes, they mentioned Hartford several times because that was her hometown. Turns out ghosts don't really know how they died. I don't think. Do they? Did they go to that? But anyway, she wants to go visit her town before they go back, right? And so she goes and visits the town, and she goes into this little bar that we don't know anything about at the time. And a guy there sees her, like can see her. And you're not supposed to be able to see the ghost unless you're the one getting Scrooged.
Correct. And can we say who that character is? Because he is from Ian Harding, who plays Peter Barron. He is from Pretty Little Liars.
Is he really?
Mm-hmm. He was in Pretty Little Liars, yeah.
They were all kind of young. Was he one of the kids?
No, he was a teacher.
That makes sense. Yeah. Oh, I didn't know that. That's
yeah,
true.
Yeah. So it was nice to see him in a different role.
He's really good in this.
Yeah.
He's got that. The chemistry between the two of them is really good. He's quirky. He's funny. He kind of talks. He's a little neurotic, right? But anyway, he sees her, and that's not supposed to be possible. So they have a really quick little chat or whatever, and he's like, I don't know. He doesn't know she's a ghost or anything, but he like turns around and she just poof, she goes away. Right? She goes back to ghost land or whatever. So the three ghosts get back together, and they're kind of talking about the great unknown. There's a little door kind of around at one end of the ghost compound where you can go through. You'll just know when you need to go through that
Yeah,
door.
so is that explained?
It is, but at this point you just think it's like Westworld, where they all go to the whatever that place was called, where all the the
You know,
robots
it's
go
so
to.
funny you bring up these references and you only know
What?
so much about it, but you
No. I
can't
just don't. What was the
explain.
name of the
You're
place in
referencing
Westworld?
Westworld, but you don't know the name of the
Well, what was
place.
the name of the place? You know
I
it.
don't
Yeah, we
know.
complete each other, so
You
you have to tell
throw
me.
me off balance when you throw these things out and I'm not prepared.
What was it
We'll
called?
just throw it out whenever it comes to
It
us.
ain't gonna come to us. I ain't gonna remember it. We watch a lot of stuff. You
Wait.
can't remember everything. So they no, see, you threw me off again. They always throw me
Oh
off.
no.
Okay, so she wonders. She's like talking to Roy, Reginald Val Johnson, and he's like, "Oh, you'll know when you're ready," because he jerks with her a little bit, like because he can see the future. So future stuff that's gonna happen. He already knows the end of the movie. Roy does, right? And Arlene's a Ghost of Christmas Past, and they don't ever compare their notes or whatever. They mentioned that a couple times. But anyway, they go get their assignment from Charlie, who's this kind of quirky little boss of the ghost world or whatever. And Charlie's like, okay, I'm gonna show you your thing. She opens up the book with the magic, whatever, and it appears it's Peter Barron. It's the guy she just met, right? It's his face and everything on the thing. I did check that. That's true. So they get the details, but they're very vague. The details are like, go take care of it. They don't say anything like he's led a life of XYZ. And so they've never seen that before. So they're like, oh, we don't know. But they go back. They have to go back to Hartford and talk to Peter, right? Um, and they keep the ghosts, Roy and Arlene, the ghosts of Christmas Past and future, because Catherine's present. They keep talking about things, like giggling a little bit, like things that could happen, right? And so they already know the ending. It was really clever. So they go back and they see Peter a year later, and he remembers seeing Catherine. The other ghosts are like, "Whoa, wait, what are you talking about? He can see you. You saw him. You didn't tell us that, right?" And she's like, "Yep, I know it." Peter, he's funny. He's like, my favorite Christmas Carol movie is the one with Bill Murray. So it's meta, right? They talk about things that are in. You're just gonna let me talk about this whole thing. You don't remember anything that happens in this movie
No,
at all, do you?
I'm just in the moment with you. Like you're so knowledgeable in this movie. So I'll throw in
I mean, I
what I want to say about it.
wrote
We
it
are
down.
not there yet.
I wrote it down. That's why I'm not knowledgeable. Anyway, it's quirky. He's really quirky when he's talking back and forth with Catherine. They're just funny. Their chemistry is really good. They're co-stars.
Yes. That
Yep.
was something we could not remember in one of
Well, I
the
couldn't remember it.
past
Yeah.
podcasts that we did that I really needed to know what that was.
And then our daughter gave us a really hard time about it. Like made us
Right.
really
So you'll have to just
bad.
you'll just have to check in with future podcasts when we remember the name of that place in Westworld because it'll come up and we'll just randomly blurt it out in a different podcast.
Do you not know it? Because you knew it. It was like
I mean, I
all
totally
right,
forgot about it, to be
the hard
honest.
drive. No, that wasn't what it was called. That was something like, because it is a hard drive. They're just like. All right, so we learned that Peter's dad, he was a businessman, didn't care much for Christmas, but his grandfather did very much. Peter had a really good relationship with his grandfather. Turns out his grandfather was a
Like a
kind of,
philanthropist.
loving, caring guy. Peter's dad, uh, Peter's dad didn't care much for Christmas, and it turns out on Christmas Day one year they were going to a carousel, and Peter remembers it a very different way. He remembers that his dad was the only year his dad wouldn't work was on Christmas. It didn't turn out to be the case at all. Peter's dad left on Christmas, the big carousel where they were on, and the grandfather was there, and the grandfather's like, "Come sit with me, sport," or whatever. So the grandfather taught Peter everything he knew about being like a good person, right? And so Arlene, because they're in the past now, Arlene took Peter back to the past, and Peter's like, "Can she come to Catherine?" They're already building a good relationship between the two of them.
Wait, can I just
You can say
interrupt
anything
for
you
a
want.
second?
Of course.
Did the location of where she originally saw him that he could see her as a ghost? That's important. Like, what was that
I
location?
told you it was a bar, but I didn't get there because we'll talk about it later. It's a bar. It's like a bar
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
where she originally saw him in Hartford. I'm pretty sure it's the bar at the end of the movie.
Right. Okay. Okay. I just didn't know if we omitted that or not.
No, we didn't. I said the bar. I didn't really admit it,
Okay.
but I didn't go into it very purposefully, though, right? So uh, Arlene takes Peter and Catherine back to the past, shows them his past, and Peter's poised to take over the company. We learned that Peter's dad and mom eventually got divorced. Um, they, uh, they they just weren't together very long because it's obvious the dad cares about business, just wants the company. The company's name is like Foodstuffs. It's the stupidest name. It's literally called Foodstuffs or something like that. It's so dumb. He's poised to take over the company, but his dad wants him to put business first, and the company. And Peter doesn't know. He's like handing out sandwiches to poor people. He's using the company van to hand out sandwiches to poor people. And the
Right.
dad's like, you can't do that because that doesn't look good for our company. You can't take. What if something happens? You can't do that. You got to stop that. And he's like, I want to do that. I don't know about the company or whatever, but the family owns this whole block where the grandfather had this little area, this community center that he liked, but the dad just walled it up, and it's not. And Peter keeps saying, in fairness, it's not up to code. My dad's just trying to be a good guy. He's not defending his dad, but his dad's a
Right. He
Scrooge,
didn't
right?
really have a backbone with his father. He kind of got coerced into in the fear to stand up to his dad, to
Yep.
have to go follow in his dad's footsteps.
So the thing about this is they're the ghosts and Peter are together, kind of trying to figure out why they're sent there to Scrooge Peter. Peter's a good guy. Like, he's got a Christmas tree up. His dad doesn't like Christmas very much, but he's totally Christmas. He helps poor people.
Yeah, they thought
He's
that maybe they made
they're-
a mistake.
yeah, but the Charlie tells him the book doesn't make mistakes or whatever. Even so, they share little moments together. Peter and Catherine do. It's really, really sweet. And eventually they get Peter to they think what they need to do is to get Peter to stand up to his dad and say, I'm not going to be taking over the company if you want to make me be heartless and cruel. So Peter calls his dad, the ghosts leave, and Peter calls his dad and tells him, I don't want to be the company. Be honest with you, I don't want to be anything like you, right? And just leaves that on a voicemail. Right? So the ghosts are back in like Ghostland or whatever, and they're like toasting their success, everything's great or whatever. And Charlie comes up and says, "It is unprecedented. You got the wrong guy." And they said, "How did Robert do?" And they're like, "You mean Peter?" And he goes, "No, I mean Robert Peter Barron. It was the dad, like the whole time that they needed to be taken care of," which you would think was painfully obvious. They see the dad on multiple occasions. They just didn't know his name was Peter also.
Right. So they
Robert.
incoincidentally helped out Peter to have to redirect his life into the direction that he wanted to go.
Yeah.
But in the whole Scrooge of everything, it was really the dad.
Totally,
That
which
they
was
needed
which
to-
was painfully obvious. But again, his name wasn't Peter, and even the book, when it drew his face, the book was wrong. It drew Peter's face in the beginning. It was very much Peter. It wasn't his dad, Robert. So she says, "You got to go back and do the Scrooging," and they're like, "Whoa, it's like almost sunrise.
Yeah, 'cause they have until midnight.
We've got till,
Yeah.
this is not gonna work or whatever." And she goes, "Yeah, you got to go back anyway. Sorry, those are the rules. Oh, and by the way, you can only reveal yourself to one person per year, and you've already used that on Peter. So the dad, he ain't gonna be able to see you at all." And they're like, "Wait a minute, we have to Scrooge somebody, and he can't see us? We can't do that, right?" So they decide, okay, we're gonna go back, and we're gonna get Peter to help us, right? He's gonna have to help out. So they go back and they talk to Peter, and he's like, what do you need? Everything's good. Yay, I'm happy. I told my dad, it's kind of a bummer, but I told my dad I didn't want to be anything like him. And they're like, yeah, it was really your dad. So you're going to have to help us because he can't see us. And it's super hilarious scene. They go visit the singer. It turns out the singer from the beginning of the movie, Susan, the lady they were Scrooging when you and I thought it was just kind of nonsense. I feel like I'm telling somebody about this movie that literally hasn't seen the movie. I feel like I'm turning and I'm talking to you, and you're looking at me like squinted eyes, like that's an interesting story. You watched this with me.
No, my
You can
wheels are
laugh because
turning
I'm telling
as
the
you're
truth.
bringing up these points. I'm thinking about other things surrounding that very point that you're making that maybe needs to be addressed. So when you're saying it, I'm thinking, did something else happen too that I need to point
when
out?
I just when I just told you that they used up their one time, you looked at me completely
I
confused,
I'm gonna
like
be
you'd never heard that
I'm
before.
gonna be honest. I don't remember that
Babe.
being the case in that particular.
Ugh. Okay, fair. Like I'm just gonna tell you the story of Peter. Is that okay? And you just
No,
tell me.
I'm
Okay,
I'm
tell
gonna
me if
I'm
anything
gonna
sounds
agree.
familiar to you. Okay,
I
let me tell you the
agree.
story of
I
Peter.
agree that they went and got the singer. We didn't
We
say in the
have to
beginning
start
that
doing
she
these
was a
podcasts
singer.
after we watch the movie. Like,
I think it's more fun this way. I'm getting to relive it again because I
through
had.
me.
Well, clearly your memory is a
Yeah, but
lot
you're a
better than
better
mine.
talker than me. I'm gonna need you to take point on one of these
Okay,
because you're good.
so this
Don't
one,
start asking questions
no,
because you don't
this
remember.
this movie, though, once again, I'm going to use the word clever.
It's
I think
m-
it hit you a little bit more in the feels than it did to me. I have no problem taking the lead on some of the episodes that we do on the shows that I genuinely like feel a connection
we
with.
both liked this movie.
Like I feel
Now
like,
you're
do you
making
feel
up
like you need to
excuses.
be Scrooged because you really are
No, you
all
liked
about
this
this
movie.
movie?
No, you really liked this movie. Anyway, they go to the singer Susan, and she has seen the ghost before, right? Because she was in the beginning,
Right,
and it's
right.
an
That was
absolutely
cute.
hilarious scene. Peter's like talking to her, and he's like, and she goes, "Are they here right now?" And he goes, "Oh, yep." And she goes, "Even the handsome one with the ascot," and that's Roy, right? That's Reginald Bell Johnson. He's like, "Ooh, you know." So it's a hilarious scene. Turns out this woman at the beginning who was like this nothing that no one cared about, she's hilarious. She's really funny. She might be my favorite character in the film. She's really good. So you don't remember her at all. I know.
No,
It's
I
fine.
do remember her, but we didn't say in the beginning. Clearly, we
I
didn't know,
did.
but maybe you should have just pointed out that
I
she will
said
come back
I
as a
said, we know
crucial.
nothing about her at this point. So now you're not listening, you're not watching the movies and nor
No, I'm
listening to
saying
me.
we should have maybe given a little bit of a character introduction that she's a
I
singer.
purposely was obtuse about Susan. Very much so, because she would come up later, like a zing moment.
Okay,
I'm just gonna tell you the story like I'm telling someone that's never seen
sure.
it. Okay. So with they start up a dialogue with Peter and his dad. So they're working through Peter. They're like, you got to go talk to your dad. He's the one we need to Scrooge. And he's like, I don't know. My dad doesn't want to talk to me. I told him I don't want to be anything like him. I don't want to take over the company. And so they get Susan, and he goes, Susan is his favorite singer. So they take Susan to the party, kind of as like a peace offering, or it's just a segue to get back into Robert's life, his dad's life. And Susan goes. There's a little bit of confusing here at this point in the movie. It kind of drops just a little bit in quality here, because they go back and they're talking to him, and Susan's there and she's talking to him a little bit, and he's talking to the dad, and the dad gets upset and walks off. And this is the big huge spoiler part, right? Arlene takes Peter and Catherine back to the past, and Catherine notices that this is her past, and then and Arlene tells her it's Peter's past too. So Catherine is the ghost. So when they go back to the bar, they see Peter's like, oh, that's my grandma Betsy. That's my Catherine goes, your grandma Betsy? That's my best friend Betsy. Right? That didn't come over good on the podcast.
No, it
That's like
didn't.
my brain going.
Exploded.
Um, and then it flashes a little. It's so clever. It flashes a little thing on the bottom of the screen that says the Scrooging of Catherine, whatever her last name is. And it's just super clever. You're like, oh my gosh, I love it when movies do this, when they turn everything on its head and take you in a place you just didn't think you were going at all. So it wasn't really her Scrooging, because again, she was a good person. So it turns out Betsy was Catherine's friend in the past. Was Peter's grandmother. They go for a walk. It shows them, and he's like, Peter's like, wait a minute, that's my grandma Betsy. Are you here? And she goes, well, I will be. Turns to the door, and Catherine's walking in the door. I love telling you this the first time. You're just like, really? Is that what
You're
happened?
such a great
So
storyteller. Tell me
no, but
more.
I'm not. You okay? So and she goes, well, I am. Here I come. And she comes in. And she's like, oh my gosh, this is me. Like, what are we doing here? Why are we here? And we see Betsy, Peter's grandma, and Catherine go outside and go for a walk, and they see some homeless people, and Catherine says, "Here you go. Here's some food." She gives them
No,
some
they go
food.
into the store.
Well, that's see, you didn't watch it
Okay.
because or you don't remember it because they get see the homeless people first, and they go, "Or here's some food or something like that." Okay, so you remember this, so go ahead. What's the they're walking down the street. I don't remember where we were. So we're walking down the street, and they give the
The people on the side of the
yeah
road.
Catherine gives the people the some food or whatever, and then where do they go?
They go into the store that is run by his grandfather
Dum dum dum. Yeah.
when he was younger,
Yep.
and he offers whatever he possibly can to them to,
To give to the homeless people.
yes, to give
Mhm.
them more food. Um,
So then, do you remember what happens next?
so the friend Betsy is kind of giving Catherine like that. Ooh, like
I like
he's
this guy.
yeah, I
Yeah.
like this guy. So Catherine volunteers to leave the store so they can chit chat a little bit longer to go give the food.
And the blankets, because he brings out some blankets or
Yes,
something. Yeah, yeah.
he starts giving out more stuff than they asked for because,
No,
you know,
he's feeling Betsy.
right.
Yeah.
And so next thing you know, she leaves the store and then you hear what seems like a car accident.
And they run outside, and it turns out that that's how Catherine died. She got hit by a car. And of course, it's a really sad scene because Catherine and Peter are watching this whole thing. And Peter's like, wait a minute, it's my grandma, my grandpa, that's how they met? That's so interesting. But oh my gosh, this is how you died. Because at one point earlier in the movie, he asked her, do you know how you died? And she said, yeah, everybody wants to know that.
Yeah, their memory
yeah,
is
your memory of that
yeah.
part is gone.
So she's
So
learning for the first time too.
at this part in the movie, though, this is I actually love this. One of my favorite movies we watched. I really like it, but this part, I have a problem with. Like it broke me just a little bit. So we cut to Betsy and the grandfather's name I'm not going to remember. It doesn't make any difference. And they're in the bar. I don't know. Sometime later because they're married because they talk about it a little bit, and they're honoring Catherine. I got like a little picture frame of her. The picture frame is important, but anybody that's listening to this can just watch it. It's worth watching. Not that you need to be told that after I've rambled on about it. There's a picture frame there, and it's got Catherine's picture in it, and she died there. So she gives like a little eulogy of sorts, like out loud, and then she wrote that eulogy on a piece of paper, folds it up, and puts it behind that frame. Right.
Right.
And then we go back to.
Wait a minute.
No.
And don't they at the same time say that the warehouse or the community center was dedicated to her?
Yeah, they call her their angel.
Right, the one that Peter's dad closed
angel of
down.
Frog something. They call it Frog. Anyway, yeah, they mentioned she's their angel, right, Catherine? And Catherine's like broken up about this or whatever, but then they have to finish their thing, so they go back to Peter and his dad, and Peter's like, wait a minute, I think I know where that note written by my grandma might be. So they go back and they look for it. It's a little confusing. They look in for the picture frame that holds a picture of Catherine, and they look behind it and they find the note of Peter's grandma and his dad's, Robert's, mom. And it talks about how wonderful her friend Catherine was, but how she wants to be, do things for the community. It's really sweet. And Peter gives it to his dad and says, I think we can do wonderful things for this community. Read this note. And he's like, well, what? And he goes, just read the note. And if you want to do something with me and let's do good things, let me know. And of course, Robert, the dad, reads the note, and it's from his mom. Get a little bit confusing here. It does, and this part broke me a little bit.
Yeah, it was a little bit confusing.
But he reads the note from his mom, basically talking about her friend and the community and how much they loved the community and how much it meant to his grandpa, his dad.
Right.
Peter's grandpa.
It's kind of reconnecting.
It is.
With
it makes him start to realize that Christmas is more about family than anything, which is, of course, where we're going. Catherine says her goodbye to Peter, and Peter goes in and is like, I'll miss you and all that fun stuff or whatever. And it's a real sad moment. And Catherine turns around and looks at Roy and goes, I guess we're going back to the the ghost place or whatever. And Roy looks at her and goes, because she didn't see the thing we saw, the Scrooging of Catherine written on the bottom. She goes, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Tell me, please, that you know by this point you were always the assignment. I can see the future the whole time." That's what I was kind of giggling about. You were the assignment. So she's like, "What?" And we flip back to Ghostland, and of course, what you can expect coming is coming. What you know is coming is that Catherine's going to walk through the great unknown, right? She's figured out her purpose. She knows. And this is the part that I got a little bit, lost me a little bit. She goes back, she goes through the great unknown and goes back to the semi present where she's walking through that same bar looking like she's going to meet Peter again. I was like, "Oh my gosh, she's going to meet him, and that's how it'll be." Like they'll but no, they've already known each other. They're married. Don't you remember? Like, she walked through the bar, and I was like, "Oh, she's going to go, hey, you seem familiar," or something like that. And she did, but then they put their arms around each other, and it turns out they were already together. And I'm like, "What?" We
Yeah, and then
fast
they're
forwarded,
honoring Betsy.
and they're honoring Betsy, and you see the written on the wood there is Kat and Betsy best friends or whatever, and it's like, well, wait a minute, so she existed in the past, but now she exists in the present, but it must not look like her because everybody would clearly be going, "You look just like Catherine, Betsy's good friend." So now that's changed things to the point where the person that they're honoring in the bar is the angel is not Catherine anymore. It's the grandma. It's Betsy. And that part, I was like, no,
Yes, that was mad
that was like,
confusing.
that doesn't make any sense at all. And that's a part we haven't talked about this yet, but we will and we should. Hallmark, GAC, Lifetime movies, specifically the GAC, in that they have a formula. They are, I kid you not, between an hour and 22 and an hour and 27 minutes long. Very seldom do they go over it. The majority of them are literally an hour and 22, hour and 23. And we've said that when they get to that point, they just cut it off. And sometimes, like in the case of Harvest Moon, it doesn't work. They skip stuff, and you're like, no, you needed to give them another 10 minutes or something to get some explanation done. And this one feels like they got to the end and they went, just do this, just that. You know what I mean? Like, they just threw something together, and it was like, oh,
it's kind of like
such a good movie.
The writer is saying,
like, this was an actual good movie, and then you got to the end and you squandered it, and it didn't make any sense. And I think even you were looking at me, and you were like, no, it's this. It couldn't have been that. And I was like, wait a minute. She existed in the past because her name was Kat, and Betsy was still written on the wood in the bar in the present. So who the heck is she? Right? Like, she's...
Yes, maybe our listeners, when they watch it, will comment and explain it to us a little bit better. But we were a little bit scratching our heads, and see, I don't like that. I like if I'm going to sit down with a nice hot cup of tea on a nice brisk, winter night and watch a movie, I don't want at the end going, wait, we got to replay that because I really didn't understand. And Reginald Vell Johnson, who played the ghost of
Roy,
the future,
yeah.
had no relevancy, I think, in that.
He never got a chance to. I mean, he was funny in the movie and the parts he was in. He never got a chance to show any future. Right, you're right. He did nothing.
Right.
Now, that part didn't bother me as bad because everybody's got their part to play. But like at the end, I'm going, well, wait a minute. Kat's name is still on the wood, so she existed in the past. But now, who's this woman? Is it a new? Does she still look like we see her to look? You know what I mean? I had questions, and I'm sure someone, if they do listen to this, they'll go, "No, dummy, it was this or it was that." But I'm telling you, like, I got to the end and I was like, "Oh my gosh, this movie was sad. It was sweet. It was wonderfully acted for the most part." And then we get to the end, and you just like it folded in on itself.
So you know how like we've always talked about, people, Andrew Walker and all those in our Save the Pumpkin podcast for the fall shows, about there's these actors and actresses that are solely committed to these type of roles. When you bring in an actor like Ian Harding that was in Pretty Little Liars and is now in this Christmas, I'm going to say that I felt myself focusing on him too much throughout the show, because for anyone who has watched Pretty Little Liars and know his role in that show, transitioning over into something like this, I was so like, does he really fit this? I'm so used to seeing him, the way that he was, and I don't know if and so I kind of think I lost a little bit
Oh yeah.
more in that too. So for the shows that have mostly the same characters that just pop up in the Christmas
Right,
movies,
right.
I find that a little bit better than those from, like, you know what I mean? Like
So
series
I,
coming into
I
these.
think this one I didn't have the same problem, but here's what I think that is. I think I don't know this guy, but it makes sense that you say he was in something else, and here's why that makes sense to me. It's so jarring and obvious when uh, when there's an actor that is experienced that's done other things, that if you don't put other actors, Reginald Vell Johnson's a good one. The lady that plays Arlene, she's been in other things too. And this Kim Matula is very good in it. She is really good in it. But uh, when you put these other when you put an actor like that in a movie, and he's clearly very good at what he does. Like, he has got experience as an actor. A lot of times you'll watch these movies and you go, where did they find this guy or this girl? Where did they find them? Right? Like, come on. And as long as they're surrounded by other people who are like, where did they find? Then it seems to kind of gel a little bit. But you're saying it's just jarring because when you watch him, you're like, I know him from another thing. Because I could look at Reginald Vell Johnson and still see the guy that can tell you all the ingredients of a Twinkie. Die Hard,
Right.
right?
And
But I don't do that. I think they balanced this one out better than I don't feel the same way you do, because I think that the actors do a good job, and most of the time an actor, if they're very experienced, or an actress will bring everyone else up to their level. But I do know what you mean. Sometimes it can be really jarring. When we watch some of the Jill Wagner ones, I'm like, Jill's been in a few things. She like knows how to act. She was in the Blade the series, and she's good. She's in things. She knows how to be. She's got experience. She knows how to act. But you were just pulled out because this guy has been in other stuff before, you think? Or you just all couldn't help but picture him and stuff?
no, and I guess, like you said, Reginald Vell Johnson, yes, he was in Die Hard and, was a one of those supporting characters. But he was also in the series with Urkel, and for the
And
life of
Family
me,
Matters. Family
Family
Matters. Yeah, I
Matters.
mentioned that at the
I
beginning.
didn't watch that as often,
Right.
and so maybe if I was a diehard Family Matters and then watching him in other roles, maybe I'd have the same problem. But I didn't really feel that same way with Reginald Vell Johnson, because, like I said, his role was just really not relevant to me
It wasn't.
in this movie,
Mm.
so I didn't get that effect from watching him like I did so much with Ian Harding. But I mean, I think he was great in Pretty Little Liars, and he uh, didn't play a character that I was too fond of in Pretty Little Liars.
That show's got the best theme song on earth.
So
It's so
him
good.
him
And I
coming
don't even
into
watch
this
the show.
cheery Christmassy role kind of threw me off, I think, a little bit. So, but clearly you like this a
I
lot
love it.
more than I did.
It's one of my favorites. If it were up to me, it would be in our Christmas rotation right there. But I do have to say this too, and I know we're running really long. I'll pick on myself now. We're running really long. This is like 34 minutes almost.
Well, we
But
can always tell the ones that you like because you kind of
yeah,
talk a
I
lot more
guess so.
about
You're
it.
right. You're right. But I don't even know what I was going to say now. I lost my train of thought.
Oh, too bad.
Too
Okay,
bad.
well,
Wait. I gotta
okay,
remember
well,
it.
let's bring it up in another podcast in the future.
I will say this. This is what I was going to say. One that we'll hopefully do a podcast on soon. Both of the Candace Cameron Bure ones, to Let It Snow and Christmas Under Wraps, which are both our favorites, two of our favorites. They are Hallmark movies. Like, the cheese is on full display. There's not cheese in this movie. This is a good movie. Like, it was the plucky little silly that is in all Hallmark movies where somebody's go back to their hometown and they've got all the tropes that are in every. To rename this podcast, this one Christmas Cupid, and the first one, our fall podcast is Save the Pumpkins. Like, we're kind of picking on those things. There's nothing in the. Tell me the thing you would pick on in this movie. like you would actually pick on with regards to
Just the ending.
the tropes. Well, no, that was. I mean, that was actual bad quality, like a weird, confusing thing. But there's no trope of somebody going back, meeting their boyfriend from kindergarten or whatever, that when they went back to their hometown and they're an ad executive now. This silly
Okay, well
nonsense.
let me
None of
let
that
me
in here.
do a little shout out to the
Yeah,
lead actress in this movie, because this clearly in the past was what, like the 30s or 40s
Kim Matula.
that
Yeah,
she was,
yeah, 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 it was
friends with.
for sure.
She had a very good air about her to be that type of character that could go back to that time and have like that class and that the women from that era of just having like dainty and just do you
Yeah,
know what
like
I'm
a little.
saying?
No,
Like
I know what you
that.
mean. Like a little bit of a vulnerability, like what's the Miss Maisel when you watch? A
Yeah,
little bit like
yeah,
that.
sort of
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that. And so she carried herself very well in this role, I
She's
thought.
excellent. She's. I mean, Hallmark knows what they're doing, right? He's a good-looking guy, and they get a very pretty girl, and they put them together, and you don't really care about much else. But she's very good in in this. I'm looking at the things she's in now, and I don't like the Bold and the Beautiful.
Oh, wow.
I'm not
Well,
making
I
fun
mean,
of her. I just don't know,
I
like.
just challenge our listeners to watch it and then comment about what their thoughts are about the ending in particular, and maybe we can
Yeah, like comment and say, "Oh, you're wrong. This is what it meant." I'll cop to it. I'll own up to it. I'll say, "Well, yeah, you're right. Oh my gosh, I just missed the point." But at the end, it's like, no, that doesn't gel. Like we're having some. Yeah, I know I'm taking the Christmas movie too seriously, but it's their fault. They made a movie that wasn't a silly. Like I'll forgive all kinds of silly nonsense in Santa Baby, right, with Jenny McCarthy, because it's a Christmas movie where Jenny McCarthy plays Santa's daughter. Like I'm gonna let that go. That's funny. That's just outrageous and ridiculous. I'm not gonna let go. You tried to make a Christmas movie, a Christmas Carol movie, and you're picking on other movies that are Christmas Carol movies. Like they mentioned the one with Bill Murray. It's like it's meta. It's fun. They made a good movie, and it just with a one little bit at the end, I was like, oh no, because most of these movies have a problem. They just don't stick the landing. They can't make it work. I liked it anyway. I think everything that comes before it is completely worth watching. It's if you're about to go watch Spirited, we're not going to do a podcast on that. We could, but we're not going to do a podcast on that. If you're about to watch Spirited, put Spirited down and go watch Ghost of Christmas Always. Like you'll thank
Spirited
me.
with Ryan Reynolds and Will Ferrell.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
The
Whatever
one that came out today.
you had the plug on.
Well, in case nobody knows, you're throwing out these titles and
How
nobody
could you
knows.
not know what Spirited is? There's an advertisement every 10 seconds on it. No one will shut up about it. But I know what you mean, and I'm actually kind of picking on it because of that, right? It's Mr. Boost Mobile Ryan Reynolds or whatever he owns, and Will Ferrell. Whereas you got a dude from what's the show? Pretty Little Liars, and a girl that I've never even and they're killing it. It's still that last bit. It's a really 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 good movie. I enjoyed it quite a bit.
All right, well,
Yep, and this is
catch us in
now a
our
million
next
years long.
episode.
Yep.
Stay tuned.
All right, we'll talk to you then. Bye, guys.